We have Aisha Mirza, and she's an activist, writer and musician from London, who most recently has been fighting the cuts with UK Uncut.
Because every movement needs a frontline, the role of non-violent direct action in feminism. And when I was first presented with that title, I just kind of tried to take a step back and think about what the frontline of feminism actually looks like in my head. I tried to visualise it, and that was kind of hard in a way. And if I'm kind of brutally honest with you, the image that came to me, that kept recurring, was of me on the tube in a sleeveless top. I should probably say I don't shave, that helps with the imagery. And watching people kind of look horrified at my underarms and at my face and at my underarms and away. And like depending on my mood, that's either kind of hilarious or also really horrifying. And it was an important image, I thought, because it reminded me that direct action happens every day for a lot of us, I think. To me, I wish it didn't, but that does feel like direct action. And it's really tiring, but it's also really empowering to know that in all of our decisions and the way we present ourselves and the things we talk about and the debates we have, that we are all the front line of feminism. And that's something different from collective action, in a way. Yeah, so added to that, I feel like now, perhaps compared to previous generations, we are attacked by so many different angles, it is hard to know where to direct our action, whereas before there might have been clearer spaces where we weren't allowed and things we weren't allowed to achieve. It's all a bit more complicated now, and that is where the cuts has come in for me, because I think a lot of people who might have been tired out by that and a bit confused or felt a bit splintered from the movement have come together to fight something that is just so basic. Fighting for our welfare state, fighting against a catastrophic rise in tuition fees. It has felt for me to be a really uniting thing and a really feminist thing. And it's just weird to think, you know, what a luxury it was and how lucky I was to be at university debating, you know, the nuances of feminism and whether I was allowed to enjoy Rihanna as much as I do and still be a feminist and those kind of things, which are great and need to be debated, but then to kind of graduate and be fighting against the dismantling of a welfare state seems so important. Yeah, so that brings me on to UK Uncut. There's been loads of women's groups that have sprung up in different direct actions, but my main experience has been with UK Uncut, which I, for the reasons I've already said, have always found to be inherently feminist because of the things that we're fighting against. But when the Foresight Society, at the end of last year and earlier this year, started publishing a lot of information about explicitly how the cuts do disproportionately affect women, it was an education to me, and it was really interesting, and it really did make me feel like I wanted to do something a bit more explicit. So we, a group of friends and I, did a feminist bail-in, that's what we called, and this was while UK Uncut was doing mass days of action, and this day was actually an international day. There was a lot of actions, mainly in the UK and in the US, including Honolulu Uncut, which I thought was quite cool, where we would go into banks that had been bailed out and turn them into, transform them into public services that were being threatened. So there were libraries and care for the elderly and comedy clubs to signify cuts to the arts and that kind of thing. And we turned our bank into a creche, and that was a feminist bail-in, and we used it as a space to discuss and talk to the bank staff and passers-by about the different ways that women will be affected, but specifically about the closure of Sure Start centres and child benefits and the health and pregnancy grant and other stuff. So it was just a friend and I at the beginning, and we just wrote up an email with the idea and sent it out to all the women we thought might be interested and all the women's organisations in the UK basically, and the response was really amazing and it was so much fun. And they didn't kind of quiz us too much or make it difficult for us, but just wanted to help us and felt like they did want a space that was explicitly about women because it's not being discussed enough. We were a bit nervous about inviting people to bring their children on a protest, especially because a few weeks before the police had got the CS gas out and were just going for it at quite close range. But again, like the mothers and the fathers that I spoke to really reassured us that it would be fine, and I mean, yeah, it was amazing to have children there, but it was even more amazing to have a bank full of mums, because it just meant that I could run around kind of a bit overwhelmed, not knowing what to do, and they just had it all down, like feeding the kids, story time, singing time, talking to the public, placating the police, and they'd even made T-shirts that said "too small to fail" for their kids, which was so cute. Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't just mothers, it was fathers too, and it wasn't just people with children, it was men and women, and the gender ratio was astonishingly equal, which I really liked. There were some men who spoke to me while I was there and said they were put off by the fact it was called a feminist bail-in. Obviously we'd made that choice to call it that. But for every one of those, there were other men who, when kind of cornered by the press to ask why they were there, basically, could really eloquently explain why it was important for their children to have the services that they already had, and for them to not be taken away, and why equality for women means more choices for everyone. And it was just, I really enjoyed hearing them say that. Oh yeah, it did receive some more severe feedback on the internet. Ain't that always the way? I didn't know. I was a bit confused about how serious that criticism was, because it is confusing with the anonymity of the internet. People just seem to go for it like absolute nutters, and you just don't know like how seriously to take it. But yeah, generally the comments were kind of along the line of just shut up and be grateful you're not in Libya, pretty much. And the idea that the things we are fighting for are a privilege, and yeah, one quote was, someone asked me to kindly stop promoting the fiction of female victimhood. Just, you know, got to know your enemy, know what you're dealing with. But yeah, no, it was really good, and like a lot of the other UK Uncut actions, just provided an alternative narrative, got something in the press, added to the discourse, and that was really important. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what's been said already about defending the right to protest, seeing as we are talking about non-violent direct action. And already on the stall this morning, I've had a lot of people kind of come up to me and just be like, yeah, but I'm terrified of being arrested. Like, and it is scary. I was one of the people arrested in Fortnum and Masons earlier this year. And I think it's really important and difficult for us, because there are so many things we want to tackle, but that is an important one for us to just keep talking about and keep thinking about and stay aware of. And not only the assault on our right to protest, but the way that women are being treated when they are arrested and in police cells. I haven't read that much about it, but I've just heard from friends of mine who are arrested with me. It's actually devastating, and it seems to be perpetuated often by female police officers as well. And I haven't really quite got my head around it, but it's something I think we should all really be aware of, even if it does mean taking that extra time to really sit someone down after they've been arrested and talk to them about their experiences, because there was some horrendous stuff, you know, like being refused tampons and being verbally harassed, being called little girl, you know, if I take your handcuffs off, will you behave, little girl, things like that. And you could see the difference when we tried to meet up with people who'd been arrested after Fortnum and Masons. You could see the difference between the people who'd been spoken to and treated like that, because it really does have a serious effect on you. So I just think, yeah, be aware of that, and let's really support each other. And I just wanted to say finally that on the UK Feminista website, they have a little tool where you can type your postcode in and see all the feminist groups or people that identify as feminists in your local area who've registered. And I just think that's really amazing, and something that UK Uncut is moving towards, the idea of community organising, and whether they are women-only groups, which I highly recommend, or mixed groups too. It's so important to develop those networks and just call on each other either for tips or resources or general support or numbers. When you have plans in action, just get people out with you, or just to talk about your everyday experiences and your feeling on the front line, your feelings from being on the front line every day. And find friends who force feed you chocolate when you're really nervous before you talk at a feminist summer school like I had.